Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. It is our great honor to welcome so many music professionals and decision makers from around the world joining today's edition of Resetting the Stage. Resetting the Stage is a global online conference series exploring dynamic challenges and opportunities faced by arts sector professionals. Each conversation convenes a diverse group of industry experts, including public officials, managers, presenters, board members, and other decision makers who navigate complex questions and examine the evolving landscape of the future of performance. Season 2 widens the conversation, encourages greater participation, and extends the reach to include the voice of more communities around the world, including the addition of simulcast audio translation of all sessions to English and Spanish, and a special add-on entitled Resetting the Stage Enfoque Colombia, that, following each global discussion, allows experts from Colombia and across Latin America to adapt ideas raised to the region's unique realities. We are thrilled to have you join us today by participating, exchanging, and discussing in these interactive cross-sector and cross-continental conversations to make sense of a performing arts world in transformation. The Global Leaders Program offers an Ivy League curated executive graduate certificate in social entrepreneurship and cultural agency. Each year, 60 music professionals distinguished by proven accomplishments and a persevering commitment to create change, become part of an international cohort. Led in partnership with 9 top universities, among them Harvard, Duke, Georgetown, NYU, and McGill, the Global Leaders Program's faculty includes Nobel Prize recipients, Grammy winners, and TED presenters. The Spanish Association of Symphony Orchestras, AEOS, is a non-profit association which brings together 35 symphony orchestras from Spain and Portugal. The Spanish Association of Symphony Orchestras has the aim of promoting and developing a range of initiatives to encourage cooperation of its member orchestras, in addition to providing a place where people can meet, exchange information, and train. Classical Next is the global gathering for all art music professionals. Representatives from all sectors are offered a place to meet and connect, do business, brainstorm, create, and be inspired. Artists, managers, presenters, orchestras, labels, educators, members of the press, and more come together each year at the annual event, as well as online throughout the year. Through its international network of professionals, Classical Next helps the global scene collectively optimize what the art music form is and can be. In addition to designing and implementing Colombia's monetary policy, Banco de la República, Colombia's central bank, runs a 29-city countrywide network of cultural centers, libraries, and archaeological and art museums. The bank hosts Colombia's preeminent annual chamber music season. Its main recital hall is located in Bogotá and is well known for its award-winning architecture, impressive acoustics, and enthusiastic audiences. Before introducing today's distinguished speakers, I would like to share brief housekeeping requests to help make today's session more interactive and engaging for all of you. At the bottom of the screen, you will see a control panel with the chat. Please go over now and write your name, country of residence, and your organization. In the control panel, you will also find a Q&A button. You are encouraged to engage directly with our panelists by posing a question for them in this Q&A box. Please submit your questions as early as possible, as there will be a limit to how many can be answered during this session. Real-time interpretation of our sessions is provided. You can choose your preferred language in the interpretation section of your control panel. Today's global session will be followed by a second panel discussion focused on adapting today's themes to the context of the arts sector in the Ibero-Americas. This Spanish session will begin 15 minutes after the conclusion of today's global session and will last for 45 minutes. We encourage those of you interested in the region to stay for the break and join this special Latin America-themed debrief conversation co-presented in alliance with our partner, Fundación Bolívar da Vivienda. Finally, at the close of today's global session, you'll be prompted to complete a brief survey that will appear on your screens. We kindly ask you that you share constructive feedback or suggestions for future sessions as we continue to evolve this growing series to address topics and challenges of relevance to all of you working in the sector around the world. And with that, let's get started.
Welcome to today's edition of Resetting the Stage, Season 2, entitled A Whole New World, What Have We Learned? This is the last session within this wonderful series, and we are very happy to see so many professionals of different fields joining us today from around the world. In today's edition of Resetting the Stage, as annual gatherings for performing arts professionals shift from physical events, the panel will look at various strategies and solutions that help them to best adapt, suit, and support their needs, as well as those of their global networks and members. It is my distinct honor to welcome our illustrious panel. David Bale, CEO of the International Society of the Performing Arts, has significantly expanded both the diversity of the membership as well as the programs, and in particular, the leadership development initiatives since joining the organization in 2007. Prior to that, David enjoyed a 20-year career in the arts in Toronto in both executive and consulting roles. He's also very active with volunteer positions, including past membership on the Mayor's Roundtable on Arts and Culture, Toronto, and board positions at the Toronto Arts Council and Opera America. He is a Chief Executive Global Fellow of National Arts Strategies and currently serves on the advisory board for the Master of Arts Management program at Carnegie Mellon University. Kathrin Deventer, European Festivals Association. Among many other roles, Kathrin Deventer, Secretary General of the European Festivals Association, is also a co-founder and board member of the European House for Culture, co-initiator and board member of the Festival Academy, as well as Europe for Festivals, Festivals for Europe, including its festivalfinder.eu. She served as a member of the Culture Committee of the European Union's New Narrative for Europe project. Kathrin believes in a cultural Europe which emerges from responsibilities and interactions between people and organizations from all sectors in society. Alejandra Martí. Alejandra Martí holds degrees from the Pompeu Fabra University of Barcelona and ESE Business School. She began her career in the performing arts at the Gran Teatro del Liceo de Barcelona in 2004, and then spent 11 years at the Municipal de Santiago as Director of Institutional Development. Since 2017, Executive Director of Opera Latinoamericana. Alejandra is also National Advisor for the Ministry of Culture and the Arts in Chile. Mark Pemberton, Director of Association of British Orchestras. Before joining the association, Mark was CEO of the National Operatic and Dramatic Association, the UK's representative body for amateur and community theatre, during which time he served as Chair of Voluntary Arts England. He is currently Chair of the National Music Council, which exists to promote the interests of the music sector as a whole. Jennifer Deuterman, Founding Director of Classical Next. Jennifer is a graduate of Interlochen Arts Academy and the University of Michigan's School of Music, and has held numerous positions in arts administration and management. In 2009, she independently initiated the first C3 festival, Club Contemporary Classical, a showcase for contemporary music mixing elements of new classical and electronica in Berlin, supported later by the German Federal Cultural Foundation. In 2011, she became the founding director of Classical Next. And now, first to begin, it is my pleasure to introduce today's moderator, Fabienne Krause, General Manager of Classical Next, to set the stage for where our discussion begins.
Thank you, Gosha, for the introduction, and hello, welcome everyone. At the end of the year, I know the energy level might be a little bit low, but thanks that so many of you are listening in, and thanks so much to our dear panelists for joining today's session. Well, it's the end of the year, and it's also a very special session we've put together for you, because it's not only the last one of the second season of Resetting the Stage, but it's also a session about the question, what have we learned? So it should offer us some space and time at the end of the year to reflect, maybe draw some conclusions, and hopefully looking at paths towards the future. So we will hear from 5 experts and dear colleagues of our common performing arts ecosystem as representatives of professional performing arts events, membership organizations, and networks. Each of them had to shift their activities more and more to the digital world. But we don't want to hear so much about this detailed process of shifting to the digital world, but we want to explore how we can build a stronger voice for the performing arts ecosystem together so that the cultural sector can be heard louder. What can we learn from each other by reflecting on our organizational structures? What effects does COVID have on our future strategies, as it might accelerate the thought process on how best to adapt our business models and future visions? But I don't want to talk too much now in this introduction part to leave some more space for discussion. And so let's start today's discussion by introducing some positivity we probably all can need at the end of the year. So let me start with the first question now, which is for our dear panelists. So the first question here in this panel is, 2020 was mainly a challenge for all of us. But were there also some positive moments you probably wouldn't have witnessed in your professional life otherwise? What were the best moments you remember sharing with your colleagues or with members of your community or network you are dedicating your professional life to? So maybe Mark, you want to start and share some positive moments of the past year?
Finding those positive moments has been difficult. And obviously, my members, orchestras, opera companies, ballet companies, faced many, many months of their doors being closed and not able to communicate their great work to audiences. But in England, at least, not in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, where concert halls have remained well and truly shut, in England, in September and October, the doors opened and we were able to welcome audiences back. Sadly, they're beginning to close again. But during the period when we have been able to bring audiences back, I think it has reminded us of the power of live. That digital is wonderful, but live is still the prize we seek. And we can do live in inventive ways. So my highlight was a drive-in opera by English National Opera at an amazing building in London called Alexandra Palace. And it was emotional to be at a live event, but also how wonderful that in order to show our appreciation after a great aria was sung, rather than cheer or applaud, we would honk our horns.
Thanks for sharing this beautiful moment. So we go over to Jennifer.
Hi, thanks. First, I'd just like to say thanks for including me in this panel. I'm really honored to be here and to see colleagues old and new. Yes, so yeah, as Mark says, it's kind of hard to think of a positive thing. This has been a really rough year. And it's always rough for those, it's always hard work for those of us organizing these kinds of professionals meetings, but usually then we have the meetings and we can meet with people in person, so there's this kind of reward. Well, and doing things online, we sometimes don't get that kind of effect. But what was really rewarding for me personally was to see that doing an online event actually could bring real connection. Classical Next has always aimed to be as interactive as possible. So what we do on site always had that intention. And so I was really happy to see that we have achieved something kind of similar in a digital way. In a recent series that we've done called Encore, we applied various things that we've learned over the past months in various ways. I took an online training course, how to design events online. My colleagues learned how to do digital events, and we combined these things. And it was really wonderful to see that, that you really could interact with all of your community and your participants. And it was in a way that was, for me personally, closer, with a closer contact than I would normally have at the event itself. So at the event itself, just like with David or Mark or Kathrin, you know, you're surrounded by hundreds of people at your event, and you can't really connect with them while you're actually running the event. But in these online events, if you design them in such a way, you can actually really connect with your community in a much closer way. So that was actually really wonderful.
Thank you, and I can confirm what we just heard. So let's go over to David, some of your positive moments this year.
Thanks, Fabienne, and thank you for inviting me to participate today. It's great to be here. We're in the middle of production for our Congress, which is happening in January, so it's nice to actually be able to slip out. You know, despite the devastation we've seen, I think there's been a lot of positive moments that have come out of this. I'll often say, well, that's COVID moment light moment 436. So one example for me is, you know, these kind of the Zoom calls, and you're in people's homes, and you get a sense of how people live. You see their kids in the background, their partners walk back behind, and you know, it's just been really lovely just to get to know people a little bit, you know, in their own scene. This isn't a light moment, but I think it's something that's really critical that's come out of this, is I think we've really come to realize the inequities in our models of producing and presenting, and the fact that, you know, the artists were the ones that really got devastated over the past 9 months. And I think moving forward, we're going to see a real shift in how we work as a community. And for me, that's an incredibly positive moment.
Thank you for sharing, David. And Kathrin, what about you?
Yes, hello everyone. Thanks for inviting me on this leaders panel. I wouldn't define myself as such, just a participant always within a community, but yes, sometimes decisions are taken, and that those are done probably by the leaders. Philosophically spoken, I think there is never just a challenging year or just a good year. It's always both. And I guess the same applies for this period of life and of time. I guess we are all constructing and reconstructing and looking and caring and being alert to the situation that is surrounding us. Probably in this time we had to be a little bit more alert than ever. But so for me, there is no either or. Also in regards to this shift online and the way how we dealt with the crisis, with the situation, there is many positive things and many critical things, as David mentioned them, that we faced in this period, starting with the artists and going on to the inequality, but also maybe the equalities that were created somehow, as Jennifer, you mentioned, that people could connect, would have otherwise not connected with, probably in this online environment, in our Zoom meetings, and bringing the community together. I was very impressed by the willingness and the efforts and the contributions of festival makers to make arts happening and to offer a stage for artists and offer arts to audiences. I've seen festival programmers doing their programs over and over again in this period of time, 3, 4, 5 different editions in a period of 6 months' time, with an enormous learning curve, to sometimes producing broadcasting events basically filmed by television teams, whereas this has never been done before. So it has been an immense effort, I guess, and on that level, when we speak about leadership, I am not afraid, but I'm concerned about the level of energy and the level of commitment that the sector has given this year to the entire arts scene, and how much of this effort hopefully can somehow be balanced by a little bit more time for digestion and a little bit more time for reflection in 2021, and a little bit of more time to looking at the artistic practice that is proposed for this period in 2021, because otherwise I'm afraid that we all end up in burnout situations, and that festival makers will lose their families because they have given everything basically this year to make their festivals survive and to give arts and service providers of festivals something to eat, basically. That's how artists live, with the money they earn. So a lot of different kinds of facets, I guess, that we can look at.
Thank you, Kathrin, for sharing your thoughts on this. And last but not least, Alejandra, please share your moments.
Hello, thank you, Fabienne. Thanks, Global Leader, for the invitation. Also, Classical Next. I'm super happy to be here with all these very interesting colleagues sharing this panel. I can see it through the chat that there is some Latin American people seeing us. So very happy to be here. Well, it is a very interesting question from the beginning, because in my case, my job is not my job, not only my job, it is my vocation. It's been my whole life, my vocation. And working this year all together in a continent where traveling is super expensive, it is a huge region, and have the possibility to be connected with each other every week, working all together, maybe more than before. We are not in Europe, we don't have trains everywhere, we cannot reach a country in 2 hours. So for us, it's what, as a net, I mean, we are the Latin American Theater Association, and we are in 10 countries. We have theaters in 10 countries. So for us, it was very challenging to be connected with them, trying to solve their solutions to their problems, trying to connect them with other people around the world, taking care about their needs. And I think that this year, everything makes sense, maybe more than ever, about job, passion, everything. It is also interesting hear my colleagues here talking about the family lives, how we can working at home, doing homeschooling in my case with my kids, but also working, and you can see the other ones in the same position. I think it's in some sense make us a more humanity community, like more.
Thank you, Alejandra. Thanks.
Thank you.
So let's go over to the second question. A lot of programs and gatherings happened online, and a lot at the same time. How can, as arts professionals, we coordinate better and work better together? Before COVID, we were all limited by travel. This defined our schedules and participation at professional performing arts events. Now there is the possibility to take part in most of them online, and it's hard to even keep track of what is happening, what to attend, what content or networking possibility is useful for me. And at the same time, could the arts sector take advantage of professional performing arts events and membership organizations by building a stronger voice together? And if so, how could this be realized, Jennifer? Tough question, I know.
Yes, you're asking quite a lot. So let's see how to begin to answer. Just between the group in the room that's visible, so between my colleagues from one professional arts professional meeting to other arts professionals meetings, what would be really helpful would be some kind of way to perhaps better coordinate as regards who is going to cover what subject, so that we avoid overlap, not sort of replicating each other's work, and putting in all of this work just to see that other people are also working on the same things. Because it's a little bit like the opera houses here in Berlin. We have 3 opera houses. So in order to avoid stepping on each other, to avoid that they're parallel putting on the standard repertoire at the same time, they get together about, I guess, once a year, and they decide, okay, who's going to do Turandot this year? Who's going to do Marriage of Figaro? And they coordinate with each other. So it might be a useful thing for us to somehow coordinate content. Now, how exactly we do that could be, I don't know, it could be as simple as a page, like a Facebook page, where not only we can see, but those who work in the arts can see, okay, this is what this particular meeting is going to cover more or less. This is who it's for more or less. Now, I know that for those of us who have been working in this field for a while, it should be obvious. You know, we think, yes, it's obvious that that group over there, they do this, and that group over there, they do this. But it might not be for the outside observer, for emerging professionals or people new to the field. They might not really know, where do I go to get what kind of content, or what kind of opportunities. What is the focus of this particular event? It could be useful to have some kind of overview in one place with all of the different arts events happening around the world. We're all getting so bombarded. It's really, really tough to keep track of who's doing what. Yeah. As regards lobbying altogether, I think perhaps Kathrin would be better suited to answer that. She seems to be quite good at that. Wouldn't know where.
That was my plan to now ask Kathrin about her ideas. So take it away, Kathrin.
Seems as if I get all the pots of the EU, but it's not true, Jennifer. And it's not lobbying efforts, I guess. But what it is, I was just thinking, it's of course always an ambition from within the sector, but also from the political level, from both, to structure the sector in one or another way. It's always easier somehow to have one telephone number to call to and not 15 different telephone numbers or more than that to call to from the policymaker side. One way of the sector, I think, to reply to these questions of structuring itself historically were the networks and the start of networks, basically or mainly in the 80s. Although IFA has been around since the 50s, as we know, for a very long time, for 70 years almost now. The structuring, let's say, of the sector itself happens through the structures of networks, basically, wherein specific organization types, disciplines, be it festivals, be it theaters, be it circus, dance, and so forth, have created their umbrella organizations. I guess that was from the side of the networks away, from the side of the sector away to structure itself based on the necessity that the sector itself identified, be it the orchestras, be it the festivals, and those can be different. And probably we will speak about these very specific needs and necessities for us as networks to exist. So, of course, next to networks, we started having fairs and exchange platforms such as Classical Next, which are more based on a certain topics, based on a meeting format, meeting model, rather than a kind of family or a club or whatever you want to call these networks, at least in IFA's beginning time, definitely can be called like that. So in a way, of course, with this digital age now, not because of COVID, but within digital age, we can see more the overlaps, you call them overlaps, Jenny, for different contents that are produced. And in particular now in these last couple of months, I think we all agree that there has been an overproduction of, so to say, content or exchanges, not in a negative way. It served not only the production of content, it served to be connected, it served for solidarity, it served for so many different professional, human and interhuman relations reasons. And maybe it's not bad to have overlaps. Maybe we cannot have enough of discussions of contents, of actions, of agreements and so forth amongst the sector. But I agree that a certain structuring is necessary, in particular when it comes, as I said at the beginning, for me in particular, when it comes to the added value of creating a certain volume as well as a certain authority, both quantity and quality, when we speak to policymakers. I think that's also clear that one of the most important reasons for many of us to exist is to speak to policymakers on behalf of a certain strand within the sector, or on behalf of the entire sector. And I think that is the maturity that we all together somehow maybe have to achieve together, globally even, that the collective strength of what we could achieve together, most of all, should be directed to the outside of the sector, to those that do not listen to our conversations, to those that actually have the real money to distribute within the EU, on global pots, within the broader economy. And I think there is really the big potential of connectivity amongst the sector, in which we create a huge added value and that we can never achieve on our own. The orchestras, the festivals, the music sector, and so they all can create their own discourses inward looking on their own. They will not be able to achieve a certain attention, recognition, financial contribution on various levels, public and private levels, if we are not organizing ourselves in a structured way, in a collective way to the outside world. So my plea would be rather to that political level than to try to structure the sector itself. Let it be colorful, let it be overlapping, let it happen in so many different ways and targeting so many different constituencies out of so many different historical reasons why these things exist. As long as they are necessary by their own stakeholders, they will live and they will go on living and they will do their job. At the moment, they are not necessary anymore. They will die. They will stop.
Thank you, Kathrin. And Alejandra, you have thoughts and ideas about how to build a common, strong voice and how we can realize this.
Yes, thank you, Fabienne. I think that, well, this year, more than ever, we are realized that working in collaboration or being part of something bigger is more useful than ever. You know, it's more useful to be with all against the tempest than alone. And we live in some case like a tempest, you know. For me, the answer to your question is positive. And I would like to give you 2 examples that we live this year through our work. The first one is our final meeting, our annual conference, we organized it this year with Opera 21, which is the Spanish Theatre Association. And it was the first year that we organized our annual conference with another association of theatres. And after the conclusions of the webinars, all the conferences that we had, we decided to run a global campaign, well, global between our theatres, about come back to the theatres in a safe way, or try to transmit to our audiences that be in the theatres, you will be in a safe place. And we started to think that if we create one message all together between 50 venues, between 50 organizations, this message will be bigger than if we do it all separated. So this is my first example. Another example that shows me that the people is also integrating the idea that working together, we will build a strongly voice, is that we are doing with 10 Chilean theaters in Chile. We want a fund for make a research or a study about digital audiences. And we are working all together to understand how all these digital audiences are and how they will keep in the future, because we know that we are having like hybrid models and we will still having it. So we need to know all these audiences for the future. And I think that this project, to work all together, 10 different theaters from a huge country like us, it won't be possible before this, all this we have been living.
Thank you, Alejandra. That's very nice insights here.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for sharing. And over to you, David. What are your thoughts on this topic?
it's hard to know how to organize them, to be honest. But to be honest, I don't know that I see it as that much of an issue. I mean, you know, part of the challenge in kind of building a structure around all of us is, you know, we do have different missions, we have different audiences. Some of us are transactional, some of us aren't transactional. We've in New York, you may be aware, in New York in January, typically there's a number of significant arts gatherings, Chamber Music America, ISPA, Association of Performing Arts Professionals, and then a number of festivals as well. So it's a real gathering. It's probably as close as we come to a kind of a global industry event, although they are distinct events. And we have come together under a group, Jan Arts NYC, and it's been interesting. I mean, you know, I'm very happy to participate because I want to be a good colleague and, you know, share what we're doing and keep the communication lines clear. But there's also challenges because, you know, we're, I don't want to say an insider event, but, you know, we're very much an industry event. We're not public facing, whereas a number of the groups are very much public facing. So their goals are very different than ours. So I not to be a naysayer, but I'm always wondering about, do we really want an association of associations? It just seems like a lot of infrastructure. Yes, I love working with you all.
Thank you. Thanks on your thoughts here. And last but not least, Mark, thoughts on this?
Well, obviously, I'm in a slightly different position. The clue is in the name. We're the Association of British Orchestras. So we are going to speak directly to our members in the UK about the issues that affect them in the UK. So from our three primary goals of connecting, championing, and developing, yes, the connecting is absolutely key, but the connecting is very much to give them information and help, which has been all the more necessary during this year. I like to think of ourselves as the emergency service for British orchestras, like you have an emergency service for your car. We're just in an unprecedented situation where every car on the road has broken down at the same time. And that, therefore, has necessitated even more activity to put on events on Zoom that bring together the different manager groups who need to understand how it impacts those who do marketing, those who do finance, those who do fundraising, those who put on concerts, and those in leadership positions, as well as other manager groups. So it's been a very busy series of connecting for us, but we are connecting our members who pay us to do that job for them. We've not yet done our big national conference, and that big national conference would tend to have, even when we hold it physically, a certain number of international delegates who will happily come to a conference which is still focusing on the needs of British orchestras. So the content will be dictated by the political, economic, and cultural situation here in the UK. And I should mention, of course, that we do not just have COVID, but we also have Brexit. So we're a bit overloaded at the moment with stuff that we need to communicate to our members. But so we will carry on having a conference, albeit online, 10th to 12th of March. And Jennifer, we won't scrap our conference because of Klaus Genetz, because I think the difference is, ours, as I say, we tend to be more technical. We're focused on managerial challenges. Yours is more about the art form itself. People often say to me with my conference, but Mark, we never actually talk about music. Well, perhaps there's a reason for that, because they can talk about music to their heart's content at Classical Next. And loath would I be to park my tanks on your lawn. So I think as long as we've all found our way, what's right for us, what's the best thing for us to talk about, I think we can all coexist. And actually, the more we're communicating with people, the better.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for your different perspectives on this. Very good to collect those and to keep them in mind. So actually, we have created, I hope so, a little poll for the audience, because at all these online meetings and gatherings, and also on site, if they can start to happen on site again or in the past, it's all about content versus networking. So do we need more opportunities to network, or is the content more important? So this is the poll you should see right now. I read the question out again. What do you think is more important and useful for participants and members of performing arts events, associations and platforms? The opportunity to network or to have access to specific content and learning opportunities? So please cast your votes or answers. I cannot really see the results or how fast people are answering. So I think that is happening in the background at the moment. Let's wait a little bit. I hope that people are not sleeping in the background. But it's always good to be a bit interactive here, and maybe also as an idea, and what we always do at Classical Next is to ask people to also enter their email addresses in the chat box if they want to keep in touch, because at the end you can save the chat and then you have the email addresses of people who want to stay in touch. So that's also something we learned over the year, how to connect online and keep in touch. So maybe we have the results now. Okay, well, that's not super surprising, I must say, but you see a slight more relevance on the content rather than the networking. And well, both equally important is the way for the audience to go forward. So thank you for this. And let's move on to the next question. So this is also a little bit more for the audience to understand the organizational structure of each of you. So what is the financial structure and business model of your organization, platform, or association? And we try to keep it brief for 2 minutes each. Alejandra, do you want to start?
Okay, thank you. Well, we are the Theater Association of Latin American Opera Houses. We were created in 2017, looking the example of Opera Europe and Opera America. Regarding our corporate governance, from the top, we have a board of directors, where Teatro Colón de Buenos Aires has the presidency, and Teatro Mayor de Colombia has the vice presidency. And then we have as directors Teatro Real de Madrid, Teatro Solís de Montevideo, Teatro San Pablo de Brasil, and Bellas Artes de Mexico. We have an assembly of 40 members between theaters and companies from 10 countries. Our office is based in Santiago de Chile, and we are a core team of 3 people, and we outsource many services like legal, accountability, IT, etc. Our financial structure is very simple and comes from 2 sources of incomes. First of all, the annual memberships of our members, and then we apply for each program or activity or new project that we create. We apply to international funds, Chilean and also international funds. For example, 2 years ago, we decided to create our technological platform. and there is like a state policy here in Chile that Chile wants to become the technological hub for Latin America. So we won a prize here, a fund, to create Escena Digital, which is our marketplace. So we started working in this project 3 years ago, and was super interesting because the pandemic brought us very forward with this project and accelerate a bit the plan, the strategical plan that we had before. So if I can tell you that, we are becoming like an hybrid model of business, because we are having our like analog super tight society between our members, and Escena Digital, it is the platform where many others can be with us, but in a digital way.
Okay,
thank you,
thank
Fabienne.
you so much. And David, you want to share your answer to this question?
Sure, the answer is probably a bit different this year than it was last year, but typically about 30% of our revenue comes from membership dues that members pay. About 40% comes from the congresses. We hold 2 congresses a year, one in New York in January, and then one mid-year in a different city around the world. And then about 30% of our income is contributed. And by contributed, I mean a mix of individual donations, sponsorships, grants from funders. I think most people are aware that the funding opportunities from government organizations in the States are quite limited. We do get some funding, but it's relatively token. But what we have done that's made a real difference for our ability to develop our programs is partnered with arts councils and cultural agencies in different parts of the world. So we have about 11 what I refer to as regional partners, ranging from the Canada Council to the National Arts Council in Singapore and a number of others that support our leadership development programs, our fellowship programs. So despite everything that's going on, that's remained very stable. We did okay with our sponsorships and our individual programs. What's really taking a hit, obviously, is our revenue from the congresses. At the same time, we're having a much reduced cost because we're moving online, but it doesn't offset the loss in revenue. So that's a challenge for us. And a number of our members, like everyone here, have been very hard hit. So we have had some people having challenges renewing memberships. We have introduced a digital membership, which is about half price of the regular. And we're having good success with that. And it's also creating an accessibility to the organization that we haven't really had in the past. So that's kind of in a nutshell where we are and sort of how the organization is funded.
Thank you for sharing this, David. And over to you, Mark.
Well, unlike David's statistic, I think for us, our major source of income is membership subscriptions. And so they provide the core for us. So in a way, that's an advantage, which is that we appreciate, of course, our members are facing real financial challenges, but to some extent, we'd already got the commitments to pay this year's membership subscriptions before things got too grim. So our concern is a delayed reaction. It's when we ask them for money next April that things may be difficult for our members after a year of lost income. We do have events, and those events do create a profit margin that flows into running the office. The income from that was eradicated by the inability to hold physical events. But from this autumn, we've been charging to attend Zoom events and have seen just as good attendance. It's a very modest charge to attend. So we're converting to an online pay-to-view model that will go some way to offsetting the loss of income. But to be honest, that physical attendance is what has driven our income over the years. So we'll just have to adapt and see whether a new model will enable us to have the same level of turnover as before. We're certainly not in a position to push membership subscriptions any higher. We appreciate that for them, it has been a major, major hit.
Thank you, Mark, for sharing. And Kathrin.
Yep. IFA started in '52 as an exclusively membership fee-based network. It was 15 festivals that founded IFA, and they paid a very high membership fee. It was really a kind of club that was meeting around the green table in Switzerland, in Genève, at the Lac du Genève. Only a few were allowed in. This luckily changed. There was, by the way, for a long time, some members are here in the room, but there was for a long time a women's program next to the IFA General Assembly that would discuss for 3 days statutes. And without only laughing about this was the reality, of course, not only in IFA, but and still is actually the reality in many of our contexts. Nevertheless, in 2006, in 2004, the office moved to Brussels. The organization moved to Brussels. It became a Belgian non-for-profit organization. And since then, it is receiving EU funding for networks that exists under the Creative Europe program, but also project funding. And that, I think, is something interesting that the organization has done. It has extended its let's say, agenda from a merely service-oriented membership network to a proactive network that undertook its own agenda, meaning that we started a training program for young festival managers that is now called the Festival Academy, which has been developing in the past couple of years and is now running on its own financial means. We have started another organization called the European House for Culture. Not, David, maybe to, and by the way, it was with ISPA. We launched the European House back in Brussels in 2007, when ISPA was with Günter Brucke hosted at the Flaget building. Not to have an overstructure, but just simply to organize, not in a structural way, but just by moving under the same roof, because there are 20 networks in Brussels spread over the city. And just by sharing a database and sharing trainees and having the same coffee machine might just in a very interactive way facilitate some of these contacts on our own level, not just for our members, but on the level of the networks itself. So it was a very practical idea. It still exists, but it's a little bit on hold for the time being. So IFA, what it did is it created, let's say, on the level of projects and in collaboration with new clients, which were the European Union and different foundations, new programs that made us at the same time a little bit more, let's say, independent as an organization as well, to serve also these clients and not just the internal services towards members. That, of course, they, the owners of the association, the only ones that are voting in the General Assembly. And this year, not because of COVID, but it had been decided before in the same framework of extending the association, maybe more so to an interactive alliance and not just an inward-looking association. We have introduced a model which is basically allowing members, current members, to co-opt new members and share the membership fee, so that not only those that are in the organization that pay a quite high fee can benefit from its membership, but also those that can be buddies, so to say, and join the association will now, as of 2021, for half of the fee, be able to join the association. In that perspective of opening it up and increasing the diversity, not only of our programs, such as the Festival Academy and others, but also in terms of leadership and governance in the association itself.
Thank you so much. I mean, that's really collecting ideas here, right, Jennifer? I mean, we are really collecting also some ideas for our future structure, but you want to share how our classical next financial model looks like?
Okay, so we're the odd ones out in the room. So we have at our core the live event model. Income comes from registration to the events and stand sales, with local production costs covered by the local hosts of the events. Now, the company Classical Next is just one of 3 projects that is run by Piranha Arts, which is based in Berlin. All of these projects are large live event projects. And Piranha Arts, they decided to keep the financial structure of Classical Next in this very sort of straightforward and minimal manner it worked very well for WOMEX, the World Music Expo, which they have been running for over 20 years. So they thought, okay, we'll do this with Classical Next as well. And it has advantages. I mean, we don't have a board. We don't have to answer to funders. We don't have to answer to members. We don't have to fill in funding applications every year. So we had more time to work on the actual content of our events. We could go in very, very deep with that. And the model that we have is, you can also say that perhaps it's egalitarian. There are anyone who pays the registration fee, which is relatively low, they are treated the same. Everyone is treated in the same way. There's no members versus non-members. And so there were advantages to this model in that it was very independent, very streamlined, relatively agile. But the disadvantages have very definitely come to the fore in the pandemic because we basically, as a live event, all live events have been devastated in this phase, and so have we. So we are really, really feeling the pain very deeply.
Yes, indeed. This also ties into the next question, but before I read the question is to ask everybody in the audience to cast your Q&A in the chat, in the Q&A box below. We will have a few minutes for answering questions. But let's continue with this topic about how we can adapt our organizational structures maybe. So the next question will be, we are all more or less, some more, some less, dependent on physical meetings and events. How did the distancing measures affect your organization? Did you overhaul your strategies to sustain and to get more people and supporters involved? Did the COVID situation accelerate your plans for restructuring and rethinking your organization for the future? So I know some of you already touched the answer here, but so let's just have a quick round if you want to emphasize something here, and maybe we continue with you, Jen.
Okay, my answer is also pretty quick. We've been wanting to diversify Classical Next, to optimize it for many years already, bringing in hybrid elements, purely online elements, or satellite hubs around the world to bring that in. But we didn't have the time, we didn't have the capacity to do those things. So indeed, the pandemic has put this absolutely on fast forward.
Thank you for a quick answer. And Mark?
I think I covered this in my last bit. You know, yes, of course, we couldn't hold physical meetings. So as a knee-jerk reaction, like everybody, we went on Zoom and we didn't charge. So yes, and in a way, I'm going to admit, we sort of made it up as we've gone along, because we had no idea how long this pandemic was going to last. So our initial reaction was, it will be over in a few weeks. Then, oh, it's going to be a few months. Then it's, oh my God, it's going to be a year. And now it could even be till autumn next year, or even, you know, maybe next, our Prime Minister is telling us, maybe you could celebrate Christmas next year. So it's going to go on and on and on. So we have to adapt. So I'm only really just now beginning to focus on, well, what does that mean in terms of a strategy for the organization? And my initial thinking is, actually going online has enabled us to reach more members. We've always had a problem if we have our events in London. How do people from Scotland, it's a big ask for them to come. Well, now they can come on Zoom. So it means we reach more members. So I think that's something we should maintain. So probably we're going to go a Zoom meeting a year and a physical meeting another time of the year, but I'm still wedded to a conference. I find it really hard to get away from that sense that we need to bring people together. Because if there's one thing I've learned over the years, the work really gets done at the bar at 1 a.m. in the morning. And that's when the bright ideas happen. So I want that back. I'm sure we all want that back, and that remains core to my strategy.
Thank you, Mark. And David, can you confirm? And what's your strategy right now?
Sure. I'm going to try to answer this question without using the word pivot. March 22nd, we went online with our first series, ISPA Convenes, which was an opportunity for ISPA members to come together to talk about issues. It was interesting, somewhat to the extent, like Jennifer was saying, our strategic plan has built out all sorts of elements of doing online programs. And we've been talking for years about having a digital membership. And all of a sudden in 2 weeks, we had a lot to offer people in terms of digital programs. We also, our Pitch New Works program, which is an opportunity for creators to talk to presenters about work that's in development or is ready to tour. We moved that online. We're now moving the entire Congress online. So it's we've got tons of content. Like Mark, I think we've really increased our accessibility. People don't have to pay the travel costs all of a sudden. We made the Congress next month it's included in the membership. So again, trying to make it as accessible and as affordable as possible for people. I think moving forward, I also agree with Mark that the bar is a great place for those ideas. I was disappointed, Fabienne, that in your first poll, you didn't have food and beverage in there, because I think that would have come up high on the score. But I think moving forward, we will definitely go back to in-person events, but I think we'll always have a digital component to it. So I think moving forward, we'll always have hybrid events, frankly, that we have accessibility both in person and remotely.
Thank you. Yes, and Kathrin.
Oops. Yeah, on the level of the sector, I think it's important once to underline that we really realized in this period that the core of what we are doing in our sector has been hit, which is bringing arts to audiences, and which is the intellectual and celebratory, or how do you call it, the ritual part around that, when people meet in a venue and so forth and have the pre and the after talk. So that, of course, is something that probably we all agree that the physical experience of the arts performance itself, but also the ritual around it, cannot be replaced as such, at least easily, through digital tools. But then festivals have gone online and digital and have realized that there is no strategies yet on really new business models, how the sector in accessing or in allowing a higher access to audiences can also monetize that in one or another way and earn money for that ticketing, so to say, of performances. And at the same time, I was thinking yesterday in another panel, there was a digital artist who was really surprised, or probably is surprised the entire time that he is hearing us talking about our role in the digital environment. He says, well, this started in the 20th century in Russia very early on a very high level already, the entire digital arts practice, creation, performance, accessibility, and the discussion about accessing arts through digital means and creating in a digital environment has been the topic in the 90s, for instance, in Southeastern Europe. So it's for them all an old story, and we are coming up with it as if it all happens now. So why should the arts and cultural sector not be totally at the core and part of this digital environment and the things that are offered to artists? They are, so should we. And on our level, on IFA's level, of course, there is a higher possibility of accessibility to different contexts. But as such, I think strategically, it will not change. We have been maybe not so busy with it before, and now our nose, in a way, was put on these opportunities digitally. But the general, let's say, direction of opening up and including stakeholders such as cities, mayors around the table to talk to festival makers about their joint responsible role on the local level to create a public space for people to live in and participate in public life has been there before. So this opening up, it's just, I think, now helped by technological offers that we have been forced to use in these past couple of weeks and months, and we will somehow use them also in the future, for sure. But what stays for me next to this ritual that I meant around the arts performance itself, for me critical is that I really, when I am honest with myself, I really have hardly very detailed memories that I created in the last 8 months of all these Zoom meetings. There is a kind of collective feeling of a lot that has happened and has been said and I have heard. But these very specific memories that I would always have from any meeting when I went to New York to ISPA or anything that I did, I knew which hotel I was sitting in. I memorized the content of different meetings. I memorized the temperature on the bridge when I was passing from A to B and things like that. There are so many senses at this stage that are not asked to memorize and to create memories of all these Zoom meetings. So this whole overproduction of content, I think, is really, for me, the most important challenge to tackle when we think about our strategies.
Yes, thank you for sharing your thoughts, Kathrin, on this. And I can confirm this feeling of where is the year gone? And it's really strange to adapt to this digital world and to create memories and what to do with all the content. I mean, we've produced all the Zoom recordings and content now, what to do with it. So, and Alejandra, you want to share your thoughts on this question?
Yes, I'm also share all the opinions that my colleagues said before. I totally agree with Mark, Kathrin, David. And regarding the question, we do have a digital strategy, but in some points of this strategy, we make changes because we didn't realize that how webinars and conferences allowed us to bring more people to our community. I said it before, we are in a huge continent, 600 inhabitants. We speak almost the same language, so we had 400 million people that speak Spanish. And we knew before that digital communications will be our big umbrella to put all together working. And that's why we started to work in this strategy before. But during this pandemic, we have the opportunity to think about a conference divided in each week, not in one conference per year. And it allowed us to be in contact, be in touch often and sharing ideas, sharing solutions. And I think it makes a huge difference between the organizations that we were before the pandemic and the organization that we are now. Another example, for example, is to be here in this panel with all of you. I don't think it will be possible without the pandemic, you know? So it allowed us also to meet another organizations, be known abroad more than ever. And I think they are part of the positive things from this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much indeed. I'm also very glad that we can all talk with each other here and got to know each other. Let's then sum it up with the fifth question for now, before I hand over to the audience for their questions. So the last question is about also a bit more focusing on the future. We are all still facing difficult times, and maybe now is the time to reflect and renew, maybe even more for 2021, as the effect of COVID will kick in entirely next year, while members of our and your networks continue to struggle financially. We heard about that already in the last rounds. What is your unique selling point to your members and networks, since you will have to convince them even harder to stay or to get become new members? In other words, what's the essence of your organization? Mark.
It's what I said earlier, I think. Being that emergency service, we fix things. And that's what's been our unique selling point through this pandemic. We have actually got the government to listen. And our members know that we are we reach directly to government departments and to ministers to plead their case. We contributed to the arguments for an emergency fund of £1.5 billion. Within the last couple of weeks, we got the government to concede on an exemption for visiting artists to come in and not have to go into self-isolation, but be able to go to work. And just to be able to, the fact that we're seen as acting positively on their behalf and making gains on their behalf means I feel that we have generated a lot of loyalty that is going to see us through 2021, and that we will get, and the great thing I've learned from 2020 is we haven't lost members, we've been gaining them. And that is a phenomenal thing, that there are orchestras who now want to join our fabulous family. So I'm an optimist that we will continue to deliver on 2021 and be there and as strong as ever to help our members.
Thank you, Mark. And Kathrin?
I have always been so bad in these pitch elevator pitch things. Somebody who sent me to a sponsor to win a sponsor for our FO award. It was an American colleague of mine. She rehearsed with me 100 times, you see, and now already I lost it. My elevator time is over. I haven't said a word. So that's me. Anyway, I give it a try.
In the beginning of Classical Next, we even practiced in an elevator, Jennifer, remember that?
Well, I don't know if I want to learn it. It's really not me. My elevator thing, I am not the person. I take the stairways, takes a bit more time, can rest on and off, breathe a little bit, talk, chat, and go on. Anyways, by the way, we made a little nice, on our level, little nice movie about the last 8 months. You can imagine a road movie on Zoom, but it's a really nice film. I will share it later on with your community. When it's finalized. It was just presented to our online conference, our online General Assembly half months ago. But I said it before, personally, I really believe that life is something that is under continual construction. Arts and arts festivals, Europe, global questions. If we all as stakeholders want to be part of a conversation and want to be part of a collective exchange and discussion about something so beautiful as the arts, I think it makes sense to connect and to be together on different levels. I really believe that you cannot be, you cannot live, you cannot develop, you cannot learn on your own. All this happens in interaction. And at the same time, you cannot impact, you cannot influence, and you cannot sit around the table of decision makers on your own. Also, this happens in collectives. So from within your business development point of view, as well as from the point of view of having something to say on the context of world questions, I think we have something to say as a collective, and that's why I guess we should connect also in the future. Hey, that wasn't that bad, huh?
Very good. So let's go to the next elevator pitch, Jen.
I see if I can remember from being back in that elevator in 2012. Although the pitch has changed just a little bit. So Classical Next, even since back then, has always been about two things, one of which is innovation. That's what we're about. And the second thing, learning from and connecting to other professionals in locations and sectors that are not part of one's usual backyard. So it's cross-sector, it's cross countries. Both of these things remain not only important, but are now even more important due to the complete disruption of things as usual. So what we can offer is connection to other people who are facing similar challenges, but they're coming from a different perspective.
Great, thank you. And Alejandra, what's your essence or selling point?
Well, I think that more or less we have touched this selling point over all our conference. And I remember this March when the pandemic started in Latin America. And we were talking by, of course, mobile, telephone. And we asked each other, who will pay the membership this year? it will be a disaster, you know. I said to make the budget, to reduce cost, everything, you know, as well as every part of the world. But then we went to a conference. It was like a workshop, and the mentor of the workshop told us, you have to think in the purpose of the organization. Don't think the way that you were doing or accomplishing this purpose. And we started to rethink, and we said, okay, our purpose is to build bridges around the world, bridges where you can pass ideas, persons, activities, projects, whatever. We can still keep doing this digitally. And the same week we started to make these conferences, webinars, meetings, and it was like, wow, we rushed over the whole year doing this. And I remember that we decided to pay the Zoom account as an investment, you know. And I don't know, it was super funny to think in the purpose and try to just change the way you were doing it or trying to reach it, you know.
Thank you,
That's my
Alejandra.
thought.
And David, last in the round here.
Everyone else just said last but not least. I just got last.
Sorry. You're a great listener. Last but not least.
It's kind of ironic right now because so many of my members said to me that we were sure that our first international trip was going to be New York in January, and unfortunately that's not coming to fruition. I think what really sets us out and why people want to participate in ISPA is the diversity of the membership. We have about 600 members in 60 countries around the world. And my elevator speeches, I talk about the membership representing the ecosystem of the performing arts. So we have all disciplines, all genres, presenters, festivals, artist managers, funders, competitions, you know, consultants in a variety of roles. And I think that's what excites people about participating in ISPA. You know, and to Jen's point, we're all dealing with very similar challenges, but there's nuance wherever we are in the world. So, and it's those nuances I think really inform us in other regions. You know, really, I'm going to go a little off track here, but you know, really, I think I think critically important thing that's happened to us with COVID is the fact that all of us in every part of the world is experiencing the same thing. And I think so often in the past, we've been observers. You know, we've seen things going on in different regions, and I don't want to say shrugged our shoulders, but there wasn't the immediacy. And now we're all sharing an immediacy of a crisis. So I think that's another reason that people are so wanting to come together.
Yes, thank you so much, David. And now I hand over to Aljena, my dear colleague Aljena, who will then introduce the questions from the audience. And I make some space here for you now.
Yeah, thank you, Fabienne. We've had a couple questions from the audience, but I'm conscious of the time. So if I can ask you all to continue with your elevator pitches and keep it as short as possible. We're aiming for 60 seconds or less. That's the challenge today. And our first question comes from Natalie of the Spanish Association of Symphonic Orchestras. And that's a question for you, Mark. You mentioned the importance of in-person meetings, but can you suggest ways in which we can effectively meet and share ideas in digital spaces like Zoom while we wait for physical conferences to be allowed? If Zoom was a knee-jerk reaction, have you developed other digital methods, perhaps?
Not yet. We've been doing it all on Zoom. We're going to try a new platform for our conference in March, but it comes at a price. I think we've all gone to Zoom because it's relatively cheap. But I have to admit that I think it works for meetings, but it doesn't really work for conferences. I feel that it's if you've got too many people. I mean, this webinar format can work, but I'm not the best person to ask until I've managed to do my own large-scale event and see how that's gone.
Yeah, okay. Well, actually, on the topic of addressing problems, this question from Alexander in the Netherlands is for Alejandra. Do you feel that the deep challenges of 2020 have had the benefit of helping arts leaders to refocus on problem solving? Has 2020 forced arts leaders to become better at reacting creatively to the real needs of their communities and audiences? Do you see a mindset shift occurring through 2020 that has made organizations look at their roles and value in the world with a bit more humility and adaptability? And if so, does this shift make the value of professional associations like yours more needed than ever before?
Thank you, Elena. Can you repeat me just the question?
Yeah, well, there's 4, unfortunately. So,
but you can select one. Okay. I don't want to take time from the other ones.
Sure. Okay. Why don't we go with the one about, has 2020 forced art leaders to become better at reacting creatively to the real needs of their communities and audiences?
Yeah, I think that we have lived some changes between our leaders, and I see also a difference between our organizations, because more than 50% of our directors are women. So it is funny because they are very open to share ideas and to communicate. We have a special chat, for example, to solve some problems. And I feel that during all this year, all of them have been super open to solution and solve problems for the other ones. And maybe because we were facing just one problem, all the egos and all the barriers that we had before, they lower down, maybe more than ever, So I think that they are living, or they lived big changes. Okay. I don't know if I answered the question, but it was a bit confused for questions.
Yes, it's lots of questions, especially for 60 seconds. This next one is for David. It's from Stephanie in London. You mentioned that issues of inequity came to light during this year. How important is it for organizations and networks to address these issues moving forward? And could you perhaps provide some examples on how you plan to do so?
Sure, thank you for that. I think the first thing we saw, and I mentioned earlier, was with the end of live performances, many artists who had created work that was going to be performed or had been commissioned to create work were all of a sudden left without any work or without any income, and really took the brunt of the hardship. While presenters lost income, obviously, from ticket sales, they were also able to reduce activity, and many didn't end up fulfilling contracts. So I think what a lot of presenters are looking toward is a producing model moving forward where the risk is shared. So bringing together more partners in terms of commissioning, changing the contract structure so that artists, it's not a pay per performance structure, but more of a structured fee and payment schedule. I think also presenters, I talked about inequality, but also in terms of sustainability. I think there's a real will from presenters to, look at things like exclusivity clauses in contracts, and are those really meaningful anymore? Shouldn't we try to, if we're going to fly across the ocean to do a tour, shouldn't we do as many performances as possible as opposed to just doing kind of one-offs? So I think there's a lot of structural elements that the presenting world, and I think very much it's an international dialogue about how we can remove those inequities and also create a more sustainable industry.
Okay, great, thank you. We have a question also from Carol Addy of the Echo Chamber Orchestra in California, and it's a question for Jennifer. Given that shifts from the pandemic have visibly benefited the bottom line of certain industries like tech, do you see arts organizations shifting their corporate partnerships focus more onto the tech sector, a corporate field which in the past has not had a very close relationship with the space of concert music?
That's a really interesting question. Thanks for that. And it absolutely would make sense to do. I haven't heard myself so much concrete evidence of that happening, but it makes complete sense for arts organizations to do.
Yeah.
I think it's something that could inspire people.
Yeah, something to think about for the future. Then let me squeeze in this one final question for Kathrin. It's from Julianne in Manila. Do you perceive any real risk in the notion that audiences may become too comfortable with digital content at the detriment of in-person performances? Or is the future of the in-person concert experience protected as truly unique, regardless of the advancement of remote technology?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. As there are studies, there is a study, I have to check again the link I don't have with me, in Switzerland, that shows that there is a risk of audiences to getting very comfortable in attending online performances and questionnaires that are circulating, that the live experience is not the priority anymore. So there is definitely something we have to look into. We will see. As far as the experience showed, when festivals and venues and so forth opened for certain periods of time, short periods of time in different countries, we saw how much audiences and how much artists and teams, different levels of people enjoyed the live interaction and described it as a gift for artists, for audiences and so forth to come together around the arts. So at the same time that it has been a new opportunity online, there have been pandemics before, there have been closures for other reasons of war and other things in different countries across the world before, and it has not killed the performing arts, it has not killed music, it has not killed the life experience, and it will not this time. So I think we have to go on doing our job and work on diversification of audiences, and this online medium will help us, hopefully, in this quest.
Yeah, well, I will leave it there on that positive note and hand over back to Fabienne to wrap it all up. And thank you all for your answers to that.
Thanks, Ayena, and thanks, Kathrin. That were already the perfect conclusion words, I think. And we don't have that much time for a conclusion round now. But I also wanted to say thank you for sharing also all your positive thoughts on this. And for me, it's really like this past year, maybe as one conclusion, was great to see that there is a network still intact as a great resource and treasure. And it was also the possibility or opportunity of reassurance, I think, for all of us. And I cannot wait until I can travel to each of the wonderful events we create. And I hope that we can do that soon in future. And that's all from me. Thank you so much, dear panelists, for taking your time. I know we've done this a lot now, and the energy level is going even lower, but have a great holiday season, everybody. And I hand over to Gosha now. Thanks so much.
And a huge, huge thank you to all of you who have joined the conversation today. On behalf of the Global Leaders Program, the Spanish Association of Orchestras, Classical Next, Banco de la República, Fundación BBVA, and Fundación Bolívar da Vivienda, we invite you now to stay with us for a follow-up discussion focused on adapting those themes to the context arts sector in Ibero-Americas. Special Spanish language session called Enfoque Colombia will begin exactly in 15 minutes following a short pause. Of resetting the stage went to an end, and as a new year approaches, we would like to take this opportunity on behalf of all partners in the series to the incredibly diverse community of audience members, panelists, and moderators around the world who have helped us to make this series so rich and unforgettable in 2020. We hope that our sessions together have helped to shine a light on practical issues of relevance to audience members around the world and helped connect the sector as a whole in addressing critical challenges to help chart informed courses into the future. On this note of looking ahead, we have exciting plans for resetting the stage in 2021, but we look forward to sharing with all of you early in the new year. But for now, prior to start of today's Enfoque, we conclude the global session by saying thank you to our exceptional panel, David Bale, Kathrin Deventer, Mark Pemberton, Jennifer Deuterman, Alejandra Martí. On behalf of all the public tuning in, we really appreciate you sharing your perspectives with us today. And of course, as always, special thanks to our friend Fabienne Krause from Classical Next for your vision and leadership in moderating this session, and to Aliena for your help moderating the Q&A. To everyone who joined today from around the world, have a good afternoon, good evening, good rest of the day. Happy holidays, stay safe and healthy. And now we will go into a brief pause before returning with the Enfoque Colombia debrief session in 15 minutes. Thank you all.